Sigmund Freud. Whether you think he was a genius or maybe a bit of a quack, you can't deny that his ideas completely changed how we talk about the human mind. So today, we're going to pop the hood and take a look at his incredibly influential and pretty controversial map of our inner world.
So let me just ask you, what's really driving your decisions? I mean, that little habit you have, the job you chose, even the person you fell in love with. Well, Freud would tell you that the real reason is buried deep, deep down, way beneath the surface of your awareness. Okay, let's get into it.
So our first stop is probably Freud's most famous idea, his model of the mind, and he pictured it as this gigantic iceberg. The key thing to remember, most of what makes you, you, is actually hidden completely underwater.
To start exploring this hidden world, Freud basically drew a map. He split the mind into 3 zones, and it wasn't about where they are in the brain, but about one crucial thing. How easy is it for you to access what's inside?
And just look at the scale of this thing. The conscious mind, that's what you're thinking about right this second. It's just the tiny little tip of the iceberg sticking out of the water. Right below the surface, you have the preconscious. Think of it like stuff you can remember if you try, like what you had for dinner last night. But the real engine room, the massive, hidden part of this iceberg, is the unconscious.
And this is the part that changes everything. Freud believed this unconscious was this deep, dark reservoir holding all our secret fears, our shameful urges, our repressed memories, and even though we have no idea it's down there, he argued that this hidden engine is powerfully influencing pretty much everything we do every single day.
Okay, so if the iceberg is the map of our mind, who are the actual players in the game? Well, Freud's next big idea gives us 3 characters. 3 powerful forces that are basically in a constant dramatic battle inside your head.
All right, let's meet the cast. First, you've got the id. This is your primal instinctual side. It's the little devil on your shoulder that just wants what it wants, and it wants it now. Then you have the superego. This is your inner critic, your conscience. The angel on your other shoulder whispering about rules and what you should be doing. And then, caught right in the middle, is the poor ego. The ego is the negotiator, the one trying to deal with reality. Freud had this great analogy. The ego is like a rider on a powerful horse, the id, trying its best to steer it. And really, Freud himself said it best right here. I mean, can you imagine being constantly pulled in 3 different directions at once? According to Freud, it's this endless internal tug-of-war that creates most of our anxiety. So where does all this inner drama even come from? Well, for Freud, it all goes back to your childhood. He basically argued that the core of your personality is pretty much locked in by the time you're about 6 years old. He mapped it all out in these 5 psychosexual stages. The idea is that at each stage, there's a specific challenge to overcome, and if you don't quite resolve it, you could get stuck, something he called a fixation, and that fixation could then shape your personality for the rest of your life. So, for example, if there were issues during the anal stage, which is all about control, that could supposedly lead to someone being, say, obsessively tidy and organized as an adult. So with all this conflict, from our childhood, from the constant battle between the id and the superego, how does the ego not just completely fall apart? Well, it turns out it has some secret weapons. And these are called defense mechanisms. You can think of them as the ego's automatic security system. They kick in without you even knowing it. They're these unconscious little tricks the mind plays on itself, basically bending reality just enough to take the edge off all that anxiety and keep you functioning. The big one, the cornerstone of them all, is repression. This is where the ego literally shoves painful thoughts, feelings, or memories down into the unconscious so we don't have to consciously deal with them. It's like having a mental bouncer at the door of your conscious mind just going, nope, you're not coming in. A really clear and quite powerful example of this is when someone who's gone through a deeply traumatic event has absolutely no memory of it. Their mind has literally hidden that memory from them as a way to protect them from the overwhelming pain. Now, not all defense mechanisms are about just burying things. Freud actually saw this one, sublimation, as a sign of real maturity. This is when the ego takes a totally unacceptable impulse from the id and channels it into something useful, something socially acceptable, or even creative. Think about it like this. Someone who has, say, really aggressive urges could channel that exact same raw energy into becoming a successful surgeon, or, in this case, a star athlete in a competitive sport. The impulse doesn't disappear, it's just transformed into something that society actually rewards, instead of something it would punish. Okay, so this whole thing is a fascinating story about how the mind works.
It's compelling, right? But it brings us to the biggest, most controversial question of all. Is any of it actually science?
Well, the most famous takedown came from the philosopher Karl Popper, and his argument was actually pretty simple. For a theory to count as scientific, there has to be some way to prove it wrong. It has to be falsifiable. But with Freud's ideas, any behavior could be explained away. If you disagree with your therapist's interpretation, well, you're just in denial. If you agree, hey, the theory's right. It's a win-win for the theory, which means you can't ever prove it false. And for Popper, that meant it was a pseudoscience.
But of course, the story is a little more complicated than that. A lot of people argue that Popper just didn't get what Freud was trying to do, and the field of psychoanalysis has evolved and adapted its theories over time based on new research. So maybe the real key here is that a clinical practice, something designed to help a person on a couch, shouldn't be judged by the exact same rigid rules as something like physics or chemistry.
So, what do we do with all this? On one hand, Freud gave us this whole new vocabulary to talk about our inner lives, the unconscious, the ego, defense mechanisms, but his legacy is messy. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. Was he a brilliant interpreter of the human condition, a kind of storyteller who helped us understand ourselves? Or was he the founder of a massive, elaborate belief system that you could never prove wrong? The debate, as you can probably guess, is far from over.